So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys because I think it's about the future. It's very forward-looking, which I think is really exciting in a lot of different ways. Charlie, I thought we could start with you. We are here to talk about the array of things, which actually you brought a little sensor dude who's over on our far chair over there. And so the deal is we now have in the city of Chicago a network of these sensors in different places, and they're able to sense all sorts of different things. And you've often described it as like a Fitbit for the city. So can you explain the general principles?
Sure. We are in the very beginning stages of putting a network of these around. We have 9 of them up right now. And we're going through a period of testing for reliability and, as importantly, to understand when this takes a measurement, exactly what that means scientifically. So what I have here is one of the nodes. They go about 20 feet up on poles, typically at intersections, in a collaboration with our CIO office, Danielle's office, as well as Department of Transportation. So there's some sensors in here that do air quality and weather measurements. There are computers in here so that we can take, there are cameras, one pointed straight up, another pointed down at the intersection. Computers in here allow us to remotely program them so that they can pick details out of a scene and then discard the images, so we're not collecting and watching people, but rather saying, well, how many pedestrians are in this scene right every 30 seconds, or is there standing water there?
So yeah, what are the implications? Like, how do you see this playing out in terms of data you can use for the city?
Well, let's talk about air quality and climate and weather in particular. There is really a lot of activity in the citizen science, participatory science with handheld or mobile air quality sensors, and there's a place for that. They give you a qualitative sense of what's happening. They're not giving you the scientific values that you need at the accuracy that you need. On the other hand, the ones that do that, the EPA stations or the county or state EPA stations, will give you very, very high quality data at very high cost. What we're trying to do with this device here is take advantage of new sensor technology that's coming out, new computing technology that's getting smaller and more powerful, in order to come in between the very expensive and therefore very few high quality locations and the ubiquitous citizen sensing. And those 3 layers together, if you will, we think will give a better picture of what's happening, not just at the region, but at a neighborhood level with, say, air quality.
So Danielle, you work for the city of Chicago. What are you excited about when it comes to like the possibilities with a project like the Array of Things?
Absolutely. We've been publishing a lot of the city's data that we collect sort of transactionally, and that you've heard some of the other commissioners reference earlier today who've been on the stage. A lot of environmental data, permitting, violations, things that are often reactionary, right? That was a word that had been used. And all of that information is on data.cityofchicago.org, and we publish that as sort of raw material for anyone to use, be it researchers or community groups or the city ourselves. And the idea is as we start to leverage that information more, bring it together to actually get ahead of problems, right? So if we take the full view of all of the information we know, we actually can start to predict when things might happen. Instead of residents coming to us because there's standing water, we have the ability to predict and see when those things are happening. What's really exciting about the Array of Things is this gives us an opportunity to collect new information and more accurate information in some cases, and all across the city in an equitable way, so that we can go and actually triage and perform our services better. And then also work with community groups like we've talked to today to make sure they understand how to use the information to advocate for policies that will change things for the better.
So Charlie, the plan is to put 500 of these sensors across the city. What's the strategy in deciding where they're going to go?
That's a good question. So with 500, obviously, we can do a lot of different deployments.
Yeah.
We've come up with, I would say, a rubric for selecting locations that's been a collaborative discussion and come out of these discussions with residents and organizations in the city and with Danielle and her team in the city government. And what we're looking for are three things before we will consider, let's put 20 of them here, or 100 of them there, or 2 of them there. The first thing we look for is there some concern or interest on the part of the residents of that part of the city for which we might be able to collect data and analyze and give some insight? That might be noise, it might be air quality, it might be traffic safety. So that's number one. Number two, are there scientists that are out there in universities or national laboratories who are doing research in that area and are interested in taking data that we might produce through measurement and providing some insight into that challenge or opportunity? And then the third necessary piece is that there's a commissioner or a department head, someone in the city government, because this is a Chicago partnership, who says, I want insight into that as well because I'd like to see what I can do about it. So where those three things come together, the residents, the science community, and the city, we feel that that's the necessary criteria for a deployment. And as we go from 9 today to 500 over the next 2 to 3 years, they will go out in these discrete experiments. They'll all be identical for the most part, although we'll upgrade over time, but they'll all be aimed at those policy questions or science questions.
That's so fascinating to me because I think you used the word opportunities, but this is problem solving, essentially. I mean, you're thinking proactively about how you can solve potential problems throughout the city with these things.
Right, and you know, many cities have sensor networks. Chicago has lots of sensors all over, and where this project became very unique is that we went beyond just sensors. We have a camera pointed at the sky, we have another one pointed at the streetscape, there's a microphone in there, and these are programmable, so we can send software out to them and program them with artificial intelligence. So that means that it's a platform, and it is, by the way, it's a platform that's being made available to researchers around the country to do research on the platform. So imagine that you're a computer vision researcher and you want to work on this platform. We know that the city of Chicago is part of something called Vision Zero, which is an initiative to eliminate traffic-related fatalities by the year 2022. It's like 10 city organizations. So they have all information about the accidents that cause fatalities, but they don't have near-miss information. So imagine if a computer vision person could work on a platform like this and be able to detect, say, a near-miss. So we've gone beyond the traditional sensor network, as you need for air quality and things like that, to make this into a generative platform for the research community to work with the residents and the government of the city.
So Danielle, as this project has rolled out, you've had a lot of work to do with a great many community organizations as well in terms of just like public feedback and figuring out, you know, what people need and how to help neighborhoods the most. How do you think that's gone so far? What have been sort of the most interesting things that you've maybe wrestled with or tried to figure out?
Sure. So we did partner with the Smart Chicago Collaborative, who is a community organization that's really aimed at transforming lives using technology and helping bring technologies to residents and make sure that they're meaningful. So technology is just a tool, but it's really what can we do with that tool? And so they worked with Charlie's team and our team to go out and do collect community feedback, to educate folks about what we're doing, and then also to engage them around policies that we were developing around before we rolled out the platform. So there's a set of governance and privacy policies that you can find on the Array of Things site, and that policy was developed both with expert feedback but also with community input, both from public meetings and from other information that we collected online. So understanding that not all residents have access to technology, we tried to different approaches to get people involved in this project.
I think the privacy thing is really important to talk about too, because, I mean, Charlie, you mentioned there are a couple of cameras in there. There's a microphone as well. These things are out in the public, which means that people walking along streets will be recorded. How do you help kind of relieve people's fears about that information?
Sure. So I think, one of the tenets was really to make sure that privacy is a top of mind as things are being designed, and I think Charlie can talk a little bit more about that. But from a resident perspective, one of the things that we actually were surprised about in some of the community sessions was just how, it was of concern, but people were more excited about what they could do with the information that was being collected. But we are definitely designing things with privacy in mind, I think.
Yeah, we took an approach to privacy that really has sort of three pieces to it. One is technically, we've designed the devices so that in normal operation, they just process images on board with an approved set of processing code. So we would have to say, yes, you can search for that in images and count that, whatever that is.
So not facial recognition, for
We don't do facial recognition. And any sort of experiment in that space would need to go through a series of approvals because we want people to know everything that we're doing with those images. But we're processing them inside the device and then discarding them. So we're not sending them back and saving them. There's no record of what's happening on the street corner 24/7. So that's the technical approach. The second part of this was the transparency approach, which Danielle was talking about with these public meetings and the website, which has got detail about not just the policies that came out of that process, but every single question or comment we got from anyone, from universities, from private citizens, has a response from us to address that concern. So transparency in technology gets you only so far. And the third piece that we added, which as far as I can tell is somewhat unique, although just publishing privacy policies associated with cameras, as far as I can tell, is extremely unique, is unique. The third part is accountability. We went back to the National Science Foundation, who is funding these 500 units, and we said, would you work with us to create an independent external privacy review board that would have the ability to oversee what we're doing and inspect what we're doing, audit. And whenever we make a change to the device that has any implication on privacy, for example, if we go from a 5 megapixel camera to a 10 megapixel camera, that makes a difference for privacy. To make that change, we would have to write up here's the science requirement that this is addressing, here's the privacy implication associated, and here's our risk mitigation privacy protection plan. That external group would then advise our governance group on whether we should make that change or not, and work with us to make it in a way that preserves privacy.
So Danielle, you work for the city in the Department of Information Technology, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you see the public using this information to improve their neighborhoods?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we will be publishing all of the data openly. So again, one of the core principles of this project is that everything is open. And so the data will be available through a tool at University of Chicago and also through the city's data portal, which I had referenced earlier, so data.cityofchicago.org. So, that's great. Communities can use that information. They can work with technologists to build applications on top of that. They can partner with researchers to better understand that information. We know that they'll have to continue to do outreach and different kinds of education around how to leverage that data in a meaningful way so that we do see real benefits across the communities.
But this could be something where, someone who lives in a specific neighborhood who has a suspicion that air quality is really terrible can use this information to actually make a case with data that this is in fact a thing that needs to be mitigated.
Yeah, exactly. For in the case of asthma, you can see leveraging the information that comes from these and various to have people understand at a more micro level what their risk is as they move around the city, and also track progress, right? So it's that measurement that we get across the city of how well we're doing as a whole, and it can be transparent to everyone. So in the same way that you sort of track how well you're doing in a fitness tracker, right? We now collectively can track how well Chicago is doing in a variety of areas.
And even going beyond, scientists will look at the data and we'll get great maps of the city and animations of air quality across the city. But we've focused very carefully on how to make the data available to empower people to not just look at the data and map it, but write applications, like a mobile application. So our aspiration is that, and there are several groups working with us to this end, is that you're living in Little Village and you would be able to set to receive an alert, for example, when pollen is very high or when the air quality is problematic. You would be able to personalize the data to your situation.
So that's almost like Google Maps then, sort of, right, in terms of being able to use information to figure out what the fastest way is to get from one place to another or something.
Yeah.
Huh, that's super interesting. So how do you guys envision this being a model that can work in other cities as well?
So many cities are actually very interested in this, and I know that we've been engaging in cities across the U.S. and also internationally. So I think Seattle will be the next city that rolls out an array of things, and I think...
We've had requests for information from over 85 cities.
No kidding.
They come in about one per week. You remember I said we were looking at locations by resident input, science, and cities. We've been focusing on the subset of those 85 or however number is. The subset of those, there's a university or national laboratory already partnering with the city. And Danielle mentioned Seattle. We actually have one up in Seattle now. There's one in Denver. There'll be 3 that go into Portland in a couple of weeks, maybe a month from now. So we're looking at maybe a dozen cities that we want to do test deployments. We have some on rooftops in Chattanooga looking at pollen already as well. So the other thing that we're trying to do to help other cities is we've already had a number of groups come to us and say, hey, we need a privacy policy. They go to the website and they just borrow ours and they modify it for their city. Carnegie Mellon was working with Pittsburgh, City of Pittsburgh, and they took our privacy policy and adapted it for their use. So everything that we're doing, from the way we interact with the CDOT electricians to policy, we're trying to capture so that other cities can take advantage of the lessons we've learned.
That's so cool. I think it's such a promising indicator that so many other people are that interested in what you're doing. And with that note, I think we will take a question or two from the audience right here.
Hi, Erica Salem, Respiratory Health Association. You talked about an equitable distribution across the city, but we know with issues, especially asthma and other lung diseases, they're not distributed equitably across the city. So I'm wondering how health disparities are influencing the distribution, and are you using specific health status indicators to guide your distribution?
I think Charlie mentioned earlier that we had 3 criteria, really, which I think will lead to an equitable distribution. But that is the research questions, the interest from community groups on problems they want to solve, and that includes health issues. And then again, problems that the city is looking to solve, like problems around standing water, and how do we address that and adjust our systems to prevent flooding and other things from occurring. So, we anticipate that it will cover all of the areas of the city for different reasons, right? So there'll be different things we might be looking at depending on the communities.
We have an open process now at the website for anyone to suggest a location or a set of locations, and people have taken advantage of that. We're getting a lot from the science community, particularly the health community with respect to respiratory disease. We're getting a lot of contact from Northwestern, from U Chicago, from UIC, and Presence Health has contacted us saying, hey, we have got this part of the city that's got some real trouble with air quality. Can you put some there? And we're trying to use that whole process as a way to design this. Think of these 500 units as an instrument that covers the city. We want that instrument to be organically deployed, not because of something we thought of as computer scientists, but because of what comes out of the needs of the community and the science community as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. One more question?
Hi, Christopher Rollison, Drive to Trust. Do you plan to let citizens upload data to the array of things? That could be a way to increase the footprint where, like with weather, you can have a weather station and upload data to different weather sites.
This is a very excellent question. I mentioned before this community science that's happening. We've thought about engaging that in that sort of community in several ways. So one is working with the providers of those monitors so that we can combine their data with our data in the same database. So one can look at air quality in Pilsen and get not just array of things data, but also data from whatever people are using there. The second way we've looked at that is in some cases, soil moisture is an example, not related to air quality necessarily, but we've looked at some cases where very low-cost sensors might use the array of things as a sort of hub and communicate through the array of things. So we've looked at both ways to do that, but primarily right now, we want to talk to folks that are producing this data and say, let's leverage it all by allowing it to be combined.
Lots of interesting implications here. Charlie, Danielle, thank you both so much.
Welcome.
This was
Thank
super
you.
interesting.